Da da da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, I am Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and I have been exploring too much of the inside lately. Today was a reminder, right, that you have to have some fun, right? My sister picked me up. We went off and did a little bit of thrifting today. It's really amazing that I have this commonality with one of my sisters, and it's not unexpected because each one of us should actually be able to find a commonality with whoever we come across in our daily lives, our everyday daily lives, that we should be able to carry ourselves in a conversation and hold interest with what other people are saying, right? Because there's always a lesson. I know I talk about the lessons all the time, but there is truly, truly a lesson with everything that comes across our paths. If you really want to go deep and you really want to look for it, you can find it. And that's the truth. And so I just keep showing up. I just keep showing up here. And today is Monday. We are picking a new word today for the next year, maybe a little bit more, considering whether or not we'll get some of these words a second time. We may or may not delve into the word again if we get it a second time. I'm only saying that because we are going on to word number 23 for the past 23 weeks. Four times four times seven. So we have been doing this over 6 months now. Is that possible that we've been doing this that long? We're taking a new word, four words. Well, I won't do the math during my live, but in any case, we are going to pick a new word. And the first day that I'm just looking for a highlighter here, the first day that we pick our word, I actually just go by my first impression. And the first thing that comes to my mind, that's what we'll go down that route. I may trail off, you never know, but I am pretty excited that we managed to get to 22 weeks. Lots of people, I think, I didn't think it was going to be that difficult. It wasn't, not that it was like difficult, physically difficult, but emotionally, it has taken me for a little bit of a ride, honestly. But each one of those rides has a beginning on Monday and has an end on Friday. And I try really hard on Friday just to let it go. And today, going off with my sister today and just enjoying a nice day, going off doing things that we like to do. And to be able to do that with other people, because for the most part, the things that I like to do, kind of a loner in that. If I really searched out, and of course, people who watch my content would say, "Hey, I'll hang out with you, Cindy." But you have to think, right? You're the minority. You could be thousands of kilometers, thousands of miles away. But I'm thinking for those relationships that we could, right, meet for coffee, go to a movie, go for a drive. Not saying that those are the things that I like to do. I'm just kind of throwing out there, the physicality of having people in your lives. And, I've always managed to have one person in my life, always. And in these past half a dozen years, maybe, right? That little group of people have dwindled pretty low, and some of it has been by my well, all of it's been my doing because either way, right? We like to stay where things are comfortable. We don't like to rock the boat, right? And even though things could be uncomfortable or miserable, right? That sometimes because it serves us in other ways that we put up with that. But, part of the lessons is to understand that just because I can tolerate it, just because I can put up with it, it doesn't mean that those other parts of me can do that, right? They work a little bit differently. And when I'm looking at the different ways that I cope and how I've been able to peel off some of these habitual patternings, in the things that I did repetitively. I used to have a condition. Well, I still have a condition. It doesn't go away. It's called PECA, and it was from my gastric bypass that I had, stomach stapling. I had probably 30 years ago. I had this operation to help me lose some weight. Right, I lost 160 pounds, up and down 30 or 40 pounds in all that time. I am content with the way I feel right now, only for the fact that I know that I felt no different emotionally anyway, as a thin person than I was as a larger person, right? That a lot of these things were my own doing, and to be able to have some lessons under the belt to help me show me some of those things that possibly kind of set me off track a little bit. I'm better suited in what I'm doing right now than I've ever been in anything in my entire life. And for me myself also, it's very it's very foreign sometimes, right? But I feel the truth of it, and I think if I didn't honor those feelings in myself, right, I wouldn't be giving these new experiences a fair shot, right? I've been lacking in those fair shots, like a lot of people in life, right? And it has affected me. And yes, I have had coping mechanisms, things that I've done, like crunching ice. I did that for years. Smoking. Um, um, Oh, so many. Right off the hop, I can't think of them all, but things that caused me so many problems, like crunching the ice and all those hulls that I ate. I got addicted to the eucalyptus. It's a condition. It's called pica. It's a common condition when you're not getting proper vitamins, specifically the B12s, right? And you can form a condition like this, and you move into it, right? I don't know why we're not getting to the word, but here it is. It's there for a reason, right? Hopefully this serves somebody. But it was picker would I'd get addicted to these habits, and these habits were these coping mechanisms that I had to calm my system down. I didn't realize just because I was the tough girl and I could handle it, I can deal with this poop. We'll fly through it. I'll pretend that I didn't know about this bell, and I just caused myself so much stress, right? And yeah, I thought I was invincible. I thought, right, they'll I'll get to them when I can get to them, not realizing that underlying stress that I had in my system was being manifested in different ways, right? In the way that I ate, the things that I ate, the excessive amount of the things that I ate, like crunching ice constantly from the time I got up in the morning to the time I went to bed, and just ruined my teeth. The same with the hulls. Those are things were so full of sugar, and I didn't suck their cough drops, right? I didn't suck on those things. I actually crunched on those. And that also, right, did havoc on my teeth. I have spent a lot of money on dental, but these things help me to get me to, surprisingly, it's almost embarrassing to say, but these things helped me to be able to sit here right now and have some of these conversations. It's a way that we deal with the underlining effects of our traumas, right? Because the traumas never end because those triggers are always there. We're constantly being thrown back into there. Hello, Andrew. You're a night owl tonight. Well, I knew I was a little bit late tonight with my live today too, but I was enjoying my day off. The funny thing is, Andrew, yesterday when we were doing our show and tell, it's the funniest thing. I ended up my show and tell, and I started putting all my stuff away, and I said, "Where's the brooch I bought?" I said, "I didn't even see the brooch. Where's the brooch? And where was this book that I bought? And didn't I buy this?" And I went, "What?" And I have one of those granny wagons, right? Those things that the ladies go to the grocery stores when they get a little bit more mature. They got a couple of wheels on them and you drag them around. I love my granny wagon. Well, after the live show yesterday, after I was cleaning up, I realized I had a granny wagon full of amazing things. I put it all away just because the moment was lost last night. But I was really surprised that we managed to do the show and tell. And I did have a fairly large bill. I spent $62 in staff charges. And yeah, I was surprised how little that I get. But at the same time, I'm not doing the math in my head. I'm really pleased with the things that I got. And so I didn't give it much thought until I went into my granny wagon and saw that it was just stuffed full. So I enjoyed pulling everything out and taking a look at it and going, "Oh, I forgot about this. I forgot that I bought this," right? So yeah. But yeah, being a night owl, this week has been, I haven't been tired. But I haven't been sleeping well either. I've been getting up numerous times during the course of the night. And I've also been not drinking enough fluid. So I've been having some leg cramps this week, right? Not a big deal. Grateful that I'm on the norm, a very, very good sleeper. And it allows me on those times when I don't sleep well, right? Like I said, I'm not tired or anything because of it. So because I only do that every once in a while, it doesn't bother me so much. If it was consistent, like my sister, who suffers insomnia, right? It would be a different story. But I would take care of myself in that moment for sure. Okay, you guys, we're going to pick a word that we're going to talk about all week, you guys. So I just highlight this off. Each week we pick a powerful word, first dates, first impressions, and then after that I just come in and I flow with it, whether it's in the lessons, in the conversations, in the interactions in my daily life, right? uh, Through some of my adventures in my life, that everything is a lesson, and I say that all the time, right? People and events come into our lives for a reason, but people and events come into our lives consistently all day long, unless we're locked up. And that's why it's very important for us to be social beings, right? To be out and about where there's people. It doesn't mean necessarily we have to talk to everybody, because lots of people are not social beings, but at the same time we need to be, right? Our existence depends on it, right? Or they call these what do they call them? Accidental childless women, because it wasn't their intent not to have babies, but they got busy in their careers, right? They got picky in their wants and their needs, going from one relationship to another rather than committing to long-term relationships that they're in and out of relationships all the time. Even for myself, right? I didn't have children. My husband had a traumatic childhood also, and he didn't want children, right? He wanted to marry me, though. And I wanted children. And I made him promise me that I could have, right, a child. And he says, yeah, you can have one. 5, 6 years later, there were no kids. And, I wasn't too sure at that point. I was almost hitting 40s in my 40s. And I wasn't too sure if I wanted children. And then something overcame me. And I said, yeah, if we're going to do this, that clock is ticking. We got to do that now. And I started putting that pressure and started having those conversations with my husband. I think it made him very nervous, right? But he wanted me to have what I wanted. That I knew. He loved me more than anything, and I knew that too. It's part of why it was all so painful, right? And we broke up. Well, I'm not that person to stick around and cry and mope and beg, even though I probably did my best to make sure that this was the right decision for both of us. And that marriage fell apart, right? It fell apart. Now I don't know why I got into that conversation. Nobody's Father, a collection of essays by men who don't have children. Yeah, so childless, it's very, very common now, and it's a serious problem in China right now. It's a serious, serious problem in China, and this is why, we do have to worry. We can just as easily go extinct as the animals and God's creatures out there, right? Especially with AI out there. Can you imagine? We can now marry our partners of different genders. But what if we were allowed to marry our partners of, right? And we have AI partners. We have robots, right? It's like those blow up dolls, but now they can talk and move their arms and legs and, right? And now there isn't that need because not everybody wants to reprocreate, right? Um, but they do want that closeness. They do want that interaction, right? We were built to multiply. Every creature on this earth has that urge to multiply, to have children, whether you want it or do you want it or not, right? To have sex, that was to have children. And yes, okay, but God made it so compulsive and so much of a need. And I'm saying God, but in actuality, whatever denomination it is, so that we wouldn't die out as a human race. And now that, right, it's become a serious problem now, and I think people need to seriously look at, I made that mistake, right? I didn't pass that microdermia down. I didn't, right? But that's in our choices, and whether that was a failure or if that was meant to be, that meant to happen, right? It happened. And I'm not crying over spilt milk. I'm still moving forward, right? I'm still moving forward. And because of some of my beliefs about, parts of me still getting an opportunity to come back and to learn and to try a little bit harder, right? In that creation of the best human being they possibly can, right? Whether or not I did a good job, it doesn't matter. I'm here, right? I made it to this point, and making it to this point has given me that desire and that understanding that if I made it this far, how much further could I go, right? Right? Maybe somebody out there will make some of those mistakes that I did, right? I'm not saying going out and having 20 kids, right? And I'm not saying go out and have children for the sake of having children. That's the worst thing to do, right? Some people were not meant to have children, right? And in honest truth, up until a half a dozen years ago, I would have said that I wouldn't have been a good candidate to be a mother because I would have crawled all over myself, stumbled all over myself to be the most amazing mom in the whole world, right? To do 100 times better than what my mother did with me, right? And that would not have served any child of mine because I would have spoiled that child, right? Mm, yeah. So, but at the same time, I might have been a lot like my mother, and I would have been overly strict, overly concerned, and maybe had a little bit of resentment or jealous, right? Because, right, the next generation didn't have the difficulties that I had, that my generation had, right? You play with what you play with in the moment, right? I don't cry over spilt milk. Does make me wonder. I do play with some of the thoughts every once in a while in untangling those wires, right? Okay. Don't know why I went down that path again. But yesterday, yeah, sorry about that granny wagon yesterday. It was stuffed full of amazing things that I had purchased at work. But I was so bagged. My weekend, oh, sometimes I show up and I just like and I was bagged last night and I apologize. I forgot that I had that granny wagon full. Okay, you guys, let's pick this next word. First impressions. First impressions. Ah, there you go. And you know what? That you say that, I have a problem with crying babies. I'm good with the kids. Once they can start to talk, right? Once they can start to understand, right? Kids love me. But the crying, screaming babies, I get it. That anxiety would probably hit me really hard. Okay, here's the word. We got acceptance this week, you guys. Right? Oh boy, this is going to be a big one for me. Oh my goodness, it's really going to take me to places that are going to be hard to look at. Some of those places where I accepted my role, right? Accepted my position, accepted what other people said, right? Even accepted some of those things that I had learned to say myself, right? A lot of these things that I did to cope with that stress was because I believed in what I was being told, what I was being taught, right? What was being directed at me. And I'm going back into these situations as a child, looking at it through a child's perspective. But I have to say, even back then, maybe it had to do with that trauma, but I was very hypervigilant. And, even though I didn't wake up to some of these ideas and what truly happened until I was well into my 50s, that was the intent because I just stayed in that negative and nothing can surface was when I was in that negative state because that negative state was everything that I believed myself to be, right? And I accepted all of that because I could stand in front of a mirror and I could see what everybody was saying was true, right? Even if I found just those few things that were true, it was enough to make me believe that everything they said was true. And whether it was my schoolmates, my teachers, in my family, my sisters were the worst. They were the worst. You come to visit, you're going shopping, and what are you wearing like? What are you wearing that? You look like a bag lady, or you look like an elephant. What do you do to your hair? And it was just constant put down criticism. And even to this day, I don't know if it was intent to make me feel negative, right? Because some of those lessons really make you go back to those situations and look at it with different eyes, right? Because a lot was said and a lot was experienced where there wasn't any need, where it was actually known that it wasn't even right to do. And the worst of it is, what if they knew the damage that it was going to do, or the damage that it had done, or the damage that it was doing? That would have been absolutely just devastating. This is why I do baby steps, right? This is when I go back and I'm in a contemplative mood. Okay, we'll go back to that. We'll pick up where we left off. We'll spend 10 minutes here and we'll just kind of look at it and hash it over again, right? But it serves me, right? And it makes it so that I understand and I'm more sure of my footing and in the directions that I'm going, and most of all, the things that I'm doing in the moment, right? Because I could be doing something else, but I'm here, I'm doing this. Okay, just looking at Andrew's comment here. My younger brother had a medical condition as a baby. My goodness, the crying. I was a preschooler, but complained about the crying. That was causing me stress even then. See, you were always a highly sensitive, though, Andrew, right? To be able to even sense that back then. My father operated on intimidation and fear. He was as good at sarcasms and showing contempt. When I was only in the 8th grade, he commented how I avoid him. Gee, I wonder why. Right? I feared my mother too. Right? Constant fear. You could see it in my face. You could see it in my mannerism. You could feel and see it in my coping mechanisms, because even back then, my coping mechanisms, remember, I was a very obese child, right? And yeah, and that was how I coped with how I had to cope, because I had to cope. You know, people say, well, why didn't you run away, right? Why didn't you call Child and Family Services? Well, number one, this is in the 1960s and the 1970s. I'm just a kid. I don't know about these organizations, even if they even existed. And number two, right? I'm brought up on, right? Honor thy mother, thy father. I wasn't even going to take a chance at raising my voice at my mother, because she would just absolutely lose it. And when I say lose it, it was just like blank. It was just like blank and go in for the kill. And that's dangerous, right? That's dangerous because, if you don't know where to stop, right? That rage goes on and on and on. Sometimes it just takes that one last blow, or right? That one last unkind word to take somebody down, and that's the truth. Okay, so let's just get back into this word acceptance here. I accepted my situation because I didn't think I had a choice. Acceptance was the easiest way for me to handle the situation, to cope with the situation, knowing that it would come to an end. If I just let it happen, right? It would just come to an end. And I accepted my role in that. And that was probably a wrong thing to do, right? But there was no optimism, right? When I was around certain people, right? And even though Cindy might not have understood, those other parts of me did, right? Remember what I said? Just because I say I'm tough and I can handle it, right? Right? Just like Andrew said, how the screaming, his brother crying, right? Stressed him out and got his anxiety. Those are those other parts of him, right? Because those other parts of him are feelers, very sensitive feelers. Most people who hang out with me are feelers, 100%, right? But I love feelers, right? Yeah, I love feelers. We're like a flock of birds. And if one bird goes off, we all go off 100%. Okay, I see now that my father, in some ways, was lonely and unhappy, but he brought it on himself. At the same time, I wonder what made him such an unpleasant person. What happened to make him that way? Well, Andrew, I think that's pretty amazing that you wonder that, right? That's called shadow work, Andrew, right? Putting yourself in your father's shoes for a moment, right? Not putting yourself as a child, but as Andrew the adult, with all that knowledge, all that understanding, knowing that your father can't intimidate or hurt you anymore, that you're able to put yourself in your shoes as a child, right? Being an adult, and look at your father, and maybe you'll be able to see. With me, it was family stories that helped me to understand, my mother's trauma. I heard a lot of the stories, of what happened. So I get it, right? I get it. But I'm a true believer that if we're not responsible for the way we thought, I wasn't responsible for the way my mother thought, right? After these experiences that she had, right? I'm not even responsible for my own thoughts after what I experienced, right? But I am responsible for my actions. And my mother was responsible for her actions, right? Physically and emotionally and mentally abusing somebody, right? With intent. That's about as low as you can get in my books, in any case, because, I'm all about creating the best human being you possibly can. And that only keeps somebody in their place generation after generation. We talk about epigenetics, right? And if those other parts of my mother are coming back lifetime after lifetime after lifetime and doing that to their own offspring, can you imagine if you gave them the reins to make some change, to set some groundwork in the world? I don't know, right? I don't know what kind of good decision somebody would make if you triggered them in the wrong way. I don't know. I just know for myself, right? Okay, this is Andrew here. After his death, I had a dream that my father was yelling at me in the dream. I didn't respond, but just put my arms around him. Oh, that's beautiful, Andrew, right? When my mother passed away, right? My mother wasn't a touchy-feely person. My mother never hugged us. She never kissed us. She never told us she loved us. My mother wasn't emotional in that way. But when my mother was passing away, I actually had the palm of my hand on her forehead and I stroked her forehead, right? It was a special moment. I was well into my 40s when I had that experience, and it didn't erase all the pain, and it didn't erase all the damage, but what it did is release us, right? Because it didn't serve either one of us to hold these kind of grudges. And how did I know in that moment of forgiveness on both our parts, right? For right failing in that creation. My mother failed in the creation of the best human being she possibly could. I made it here. I'm here. She created me, right? So that's hers. That's hers. But it could have happened a lot sooner than it did, right? Just in the choices that they made. The only reason I got here was that love, right? And that adventure that I was living vicariously of my father's. Okay. In a streetcar named Desire, this is Andrew. In a streetcar named Desire, Blanche says that the unforgivable thing is deliberate cruelty. For our own sakes, we need to forgive even that. It's a long time since I saw that movie. I don't even remember that line, but what a true line that is. To at least, on the very least, to be able to recognize that forgiveness. I was able to move on uh, after that experience. And I bet you were able to move on after that dream when you put your arms around your father. And maybe that was, because again, maybe your father had no sensitivities about him either. And he didn't know how to express that love that he had for you, right? And maybe he recognized the damage that he had done in his creation of the best human being he possibly could in you, right? Just like my mother failed me, right? We all fail each other, but it's only in that recognition, that forgiveness, and that movement forward. And whether we move with this forgiveness or the people that we forgive or the situation that we forgive, or we just forgive and move on, right? Either way, it comes off our plate. Okay, that's wonderful, Cindy, that you could show kindness to your mother as she was in the process of leaving the world. I would have loved to have loved my mother. I would have loved it. Exteriorly, my mother was a very beautiful lady. You know, I would have loved as a child to boast how beautiful my mother was, but I was always so far behind. I was like that ugly duckling at the end of the line, not walking too close to her, right? Her and her beautiful children. And that's not the way I felt. That's not the way I was treated. And it came out in that experience and in that relationship that I had with my mother. It was a very difficult relationship. I didn't, even when my mother passed away, I didn't love her. I was grateful, right, that she married my dad, and right, that I had my father, that I had my sisters, but I didn't love my mother. She was a stranger to me, like 100%. I was always in a state of hypervigilance around her. There was, right, because when my dad was around, right, she couldn't do it like she did it when he wasn't around. My dad wasn't around quite often, but she didn't do it as much. But in the 70s, it was still kind of tolerable. The slaps upside the head, right? The idiotic, mean things that parents would say, and using the kids as the examples of not what not to do, right? With the rest of my siblings, and that hurt my siblings too, right? We all have issues, and right, and maybe, you know, my mother had pain. I do believe that through her experiences, they changed her. But those triggers when she went blank were horrifying and unpredictable, totally unpredictable. And, you know, I got through it, right? Right. And I don't know if that's all that I should say is that I got through it. But really, truly, that's all it was, is that I got through it. But I should pay attention to all those things that help me cope. Not just the coping mechanisms. That was for the really bad stuff, right? Those really bad stress days. It skipped a generation with you. Well, that's a good sign, because epigenetically, a lot of these tendencies that run in families, like the alcoholism and drugs and these different addictions that are out there, if you can skip those generations, it weakens it, right? Until it comes to the point where it's not in us anymore epigenetically, right? Yeah, I don't think it skipped a beat. I know my father, I was a gambler. My father was a gambler. My grandfather, my dad's father, was an alcoholic. Uh my yeah, my mother's side, I didn't know my grandparents very well. I heard stories. And I understand a lot of my mother's makeup comes from some of those stories. So again, as an adult, I could put myself in my mother's shoes and appreciate the trauma that she went through, and she was dealing with it the best she could. But I say, you have to be responsible for your actions. You lay a hand on your kids, that's on you. You intently keep them in their place in order that you're feeling comfortable, that you're not feeling that pain, that's on you. That lack of progress in moving forward, right? In not making any movement at all and possibly going backwards in the best creation of the best human being possibly, that's that's on, right? That's on that too. But I, pulling it back here, looking at this word acceptance, right? It was the first thing that came to mind today was my acceptance of it all, my acceptance of my place, just because I didn't think I had any choices. There were lots of grips, lots of things, right? Lots of tools, lots of manipulations, lots of reasons, and lots of beliefs in those reasons that stop me from, right, thinking or moving any differently. I didn't have a chance in hell, but somehow I made it here, right? Worse for wear, I don't know, right? I have nothing to compare it to. I have no idea the person that I might have been. I know those passions that I had, right? But if I didn't follow through on them, those are missed opportunities, right? So I'm starting late in the game. I accept that I'm starting a little bit late in the game, but that's not going to stop me from moving in any way at all, right? I accept where I'm at in this moment. No, in this moment, knowing that a year from now, it's not even going to be close to where I am right now. I'm going to be so far ahead of the game, right? Right? Okay, you guys, I'm tired. Time for time for another cup of coffee and call it a night. Call it a night, and we'll be back tomorrow with this word acceptance, looking at it in a different perspective. Thank you, Andrew, for popping in. Thank you for contributing to that conversation. Right? That's we are like the five people we surround ourselves with. And I truly believe that, my mother was possibly a good mother to my sisters, right? Because they don't seem to have the same relationship problems as I did with her. But I also understand that, right, in my family, our roles were all based on hierarchy, right? And maybe we'll talk about the golden child and the middle child and the favorite child, right? And then there was the scapegoat. It is what it is. I'm here now, and I'm going to give it my best shot. My best shot. You guys, have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.